Montana Territory, 1878. The wind cut across the prairie like a knife, carrying with it the scent of sagebrush and approaching winter. Daniel Yates reigned in his sorrel gelding at the edge of a property he had never expected to visit, watching smoke curl from the chimney of the small timber house ahead. He was 25 years old, lean and broad-shouldered from years of ranch work, his face clean-shaven beneath the brim of his dusty brown Stetson. The September sun was already dipping toward the mountains, painting the sky in shades of copper and gold. Daniel had learned one truth on the frontier that guided every decision he made: caring too much got you killed. He had watched his father die trying to save a neighbor's cattle from rustlers when Daniel was 16. He had seen men lose everything over a woman, watched families torn apart by the harshness of this land. So Daniel kept to himself, worked hard, saved his money, and planned for a future that involved land of his own and nothing more. Love was a luxury the West could not afford, but Tom Henderson had been different. The older rancher had taken Daniel on 5 years ago when he was just a green kid who barely knew one end of a rope from the other. Tom had taught him everything about working cattle, about reading the weather, about surviving in country that did not forgive mistakes. And 3 weeks ago, Tom had died when his horse stumbled in a gopher hole and rolled on him, leaving behind a young widow and debts that Daniel knew would crush her. Daniel had come to pay those debts, not because he wanted to get involved, but because he owed Tom Henderson that much. He would clear the accounts, make sure the widow had enough to get by or get back east where she belonged, and then he would return to his solitary life. It was the right thing to do, the only thing to do. He dismounted and tied his horse to the fence rail, noting the sagging gate and the chicken coop that needed repair. The whole place had an air of barely controlled desperation. Daniel removed his hat and knocked on the door, hearing footsteps inside. The woman who opened the door took his breath away, though he would never admit it. Beatrice Henderson was perhaps 23 years old, with honey-blonde hair pinned up in a simple style that still managed to catch the fading sunlight. Her dress was black wool, mourning clothes, but even the somber color could not hide her beauty. Her eyes were the blue of a high-country lake, and they looked at him with a mixture of wariness and exhaustion. "Mrs. Henderson," Daniel said, holding his hat, "my name is Daniel Yates. I worked for your husband. I am sorry for your loss." Her expression did not change. "Mr. Yates, Tom spoke of you. What can I do for you?" "I came to settle some business, ma'am. May I come in?" She hesitated, then stepped back. "Of course." The interior of the house was neat but spare. A fire burned in the stone hearth, and a pot of something that smelled like beans hung over it. The furniture was handmade and practical. Daniel noticed a wedding photograph on the mantel, Tom Henderson looking proud beside his young bride. "Mrs. Henderson, I know Tom had some debts in town, at the mercantile, the feed store, the doctor. I have come to pay them." Beatrice turned to face him, and he saw color rise in her pale cheeks. "That is very kind, Mr. Yates, but I cannot accept charity." "It is not charity. Tom was a good man. He helped me when I needed it. I am just returning the favor." "The answer is no." Her voice was firm despite the tremor in it. "I will manage on my own." Daniel set his hat on the table, frustrated. "Ma'am, with respect, how will you manage? Winter is coming. You have livestock to feed, repairs that need doing. The bank will want the mortgage payments." "I said no, Mr. Yates." Her blue eyes flashed with something between pride and panic. "I cannot love again. I will not allow myself to be indebted to another man, to care about another person in this terrible place. Tom is gone, and caring about him, loving him, has left me with this pain. I will not do it again. I will manage alone, and when I cannot manage anymore, I will sell this place and return east. But I will not accept help that comes with obligations." Daniel stared at her, recognizing the same fierce independence he saw in himself every morning. But he also saw something else, a woman one bad month away from losing everything, too stubborn to admit she needed help. "What if there were no obligations?" he heard himself say. "What if I just did the work that needs doing and you fed me supper in exchange? A fair trade, nothing more." "Why would you do that?" "Because Tom would have done it for me." Beatrice studied him for a long moment, and Daniel watched her pride war with her practicality. Finally, she gave a small nod. "The fence posts on the north pasture need replacing before the snow comes. If you want to work for your supper, you can start there. But I want it understood, Mr. Yates, that this is a business arrangement and nothing more." "Understood, ma'am. And you can call me Beatrice. Mrs. Henderson makes me feel like an old woman." Daniel allowed himself a small smile. Then you should call me Daniel. Over the following days, Daniel fell into a routine. He would ride over from the neighboring ranch where he worked, arriving at Beatrice's place in the late afternoon when his own work was done. He replaced fence posts, repaired the sagging gate, fixed the leak in the chicken coop roof. Beatrice would cook supper, and they would eat mostly in silence, the ghost of Tom Henderson sitting between them like an uninvited guest. But slowly, carefully, they began to talk. Daniel learned that Beatrice was 24 years old, originally from Missouri. She had married Tom 3 years ago when he came east looking for a wife, drawn by his letters describing the beauty of Montana territory and his dreams of building a successful ranch. She had loved him, truly loved him, and his death had shattered something inside her. "I thought we would have years," she said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "I thought we would grow old together, have children, build something lasting. Instead, I got 3 years and a broken heart. This land takes everything, Daniel. It is too hard, too unforgiving. I was a fool to think love could survive here." Daniel understood that feeling more than she knew. "The frontier is no place for soft feelings," he agreed. "A man has to stay hard to survive." "And a woman. I suppose the same." But even as he said it, Daniel was beginning to doubt his own words. Because watching Beatrice work, seeing her determination and strength, he realized that surviving alone and truly living were not the same thing. She was surviving barely, but the light had gone out of her eyes. 2 weeks after he started helping, Daniel arrived to find Beatrice in the barn, struggling to calm a horse that had gotten tangled in some old wire. The animal was panicking, thrashing against the barn wall, and Beatrice was trying to get close enough to free it without getting kicked. "Get back," Daniel called, moving quickly past her. He approached the horse with steady hands and a calm voice, the way Tom had taught him. "Easy now, easy. Nobody is going to hurt you." The horse's eye rolled white with fear, but Daniel kept talking, kept moving slowly. Finally, he got close enough to grasp the wire and untwist it from the horse's leg. The animal bolted past him out into the corral, and Daniel let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. "Are you hurt?" Beatrice asked, her hand on his arm. Daniel looked down at her touch, surprised by the contact. "No, ma'am, but you could have been." "You should have waited for help." "There is no one to wait for," she said quietly. "There is only me." Something in her voice, the loneliness and resignation, made Daniel's chest tighten. "You have me. For whatever that is worth." Their eyes met, and for a moment something passed between them, some acknowledgement of the walls they had both built and the cracks beginning to show. Then Beatrice pulled her hand back and stepped away. "Thank you," she said. "For helping with the horse." That night at supper, Beatrice asked, "Why do you not have a wife, Daniel? A young man like you must have had opportunities." Daniel pushed beans around his plate. "The same reason you say you will not love again, I suppose. I saw what love cost my father. He died trying to help a neighbor, left my mother and me with nothing. After she passed, I decided some things are not worth the price." "So you live alone. It is safer that way." Beatrice nodded slowly. "Yes, safer, but is it enough?" The question haunted Daniel as he rode home that night. Was it enough? A month ago, he would have said yes without hesitation. But now, having spent evenings in Beatrice's company, seeing her smile when he fixed something that had been broken, hearing her laugh when he told a story about a stubborn calf, he was no longer sure. October arrived with the first dusting of snow on the mountain peaks. Daniel paid off Beatrice's debts in town without telling her, arranging for the shop owners to say the accounts had been settled by Tom before he died. He knew she would be angry if she found out, but he could not stand the thought of her losing the ranch because of pride. One afternoon, Daniel was replacing boards on the barn when a rider appeared on the trail. The man was rough-looking, with a thick beard and a tied-down pistol that marked him as someone comfortable with violence. Daniel set down his hammer and walked out to meet him. "Help you with something?" Daniel asked. The man looked past him toward the house. "I am here to see the widow Henderson, got business with her." "What kind of business?" "The private kind you her hand." "Something like that." The man's eyes narrowed. "Then you can tell her that Cyrus Malone was here. Tell her I will be back next week to discuss her selling this property. Me and Tom had an understanding before he died, and I intend to see it through." I think if Tom had made an agreement, his widow would know about it. Malone leaned forward in his saddle, his hand resting near his gun. And I think you should mind your own business, Cowboy. This land is worth something to certain parties and we are willing to pay fair, but Mrs. Henderson is going to sell one way or another. Better she takes the money. Daniel felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his voice level. You need to leave now. I will be back, Malone said. You tell her that. He wheeled his horse and rode off, leaving Daniel staring after him with a sense of dread settling in his stomach. When he turned around, Beatrice was standing on the porch, her face white. Did you hear that? Daniel asked. She nodded. Tom never mentioned anyone named Malone. What do you think he wants? Nothing good. Has anyone else been around? Anyone asking about the property? No, just you. Daniel climbed the porch steps. I think you should come stay at the main ranch for a while. The foreman's wife would be happy for the company, and you would be safer there. This is my home, Daniel. I will not be driven from it. Beatrice, that man was making threats. I know what he was doing. She wrapped her arms around herself against the cold wind, but if I run now, I will never stop running. This land, this house, it is all I have left of Tom. I cannot just abandon it. Daniel wanted to argue, but he understood. Pride and stubbornness were all that kept some people going on the frontier. Instead, he said, then I will stay. Sleep in the barn, keep watch, just until we know what Malone wants. You have your own work to do. I will manage, please, Beatrice, let me do this. She looked at him for a long moment, and Daniel saw her weighing independence against safety. Finally, she nodded, all right, but just until we understand the situation. That night, Daniel made a bed in the barn loft where he could watch both the house and the approach road. He did not sleep much, starting at every sound. But nothing disturbed the peaceful Montana night except the wind and the occasional cry of a coyote. The next day, Daniel rode into town and asked around about Cyrus Malone. What he learned made his blood run cold. Malone worked for a group of investors who were buying up land along the creek, planning to sell it to the railroad at a profit. They had been pressuring small ranchers to sell, and those who refused sometimes found their cattle scattered, their fences cut, their wells poisoned. Nothing that could be proven, but a pattern that spoke of organized intimidation. When Daniel returned to Beatrice's ranch, he found her in the kitchen baking bread, flour dusting her dark dress. She looked up when he entered, and he saw hope and fear warring in her expression. What did you learn? He told her everything, watching her face grow pale. When he finished, she sank into a chair. I cannot sell, she said. Even if I wanted to, the bank owns more of this land than I do, and if I sell, I will have nothing. Tom's life, our dreams, everything we worked for, it will all be for nothing. Daniel knelt beside her chair. Then we do not sell. We find a way to fight. She looked at him. Daniel, this is not your problem. Yes, it is, because somewhere along the way I started caring what happens to you. And I know you said you cannot love again, that you will not let yourself be indebted to anyone. But Beatrice, what if being alone is not being safe? What if it is just being alone? Tears welled in her blue eyes. I am afraid, she whispered. I am afraid to care about you, afraid to need anyone, because when I lose them, and I will lose them because this land takes everything, it will break me again. And I do not think I can survive that twice. You are stronger than you think. Am I? Because I do not feel strong. I feel terrified every single day. Daniel reached out and took her hand, her fingers small and cool in his. Then be terrified, but do not be terrified alone. Let me help you fight for this place. Let me stand with you. Why would you risk yourself for me? The answer came to Daniel with sudden clarity. Because I have been living half a life telling myself that staying alone keeps me safe, but all it does is keep me lonely. You make me want more than that. You make me want to build something, to fight for something. To love someone, even if this hard land makes that dangerous. Beatrice gripped his hand tightly. I am not ready, she said. I am not ready to love again, not yet. It is too soon and I am too broken. I know. I am not asking you to be ready. I am just asking you to let me stay, to let me help. The rest can wait. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. Daniel reached up and gently wiped them away, and for a moment they stayed like that, connected by grief and hope, and the first fragile threads of something neither of them wanted to name. Over the following week, Daniel organized the neighboring ranchers. Tom Henderson had been well-liked, and many of them had faced pressure from Malone's people themselves. They agreed to watch out for Beatrice's property and to present a united front against any intimidation. But Malone was not deterred. One night, someone cut Beatrice's fence and scattered her small herd. Daniel and two other men spent a full day rounding up the cattle, and they lost 3 head that they never found. Another night, someone tried to start a fire in the hay barn, but Daniel, sleeping in the loft, smelled the smoke and put it out before it could spread. Through it all, Daniel stayed. He moved between his job at the neighboring ranch and Beatrice's property, sleeping in her barn more nights than not. And slowly, despite her resistance, despite her fear, Beatrice began to depend on him. More than that, she began to trust him. They fell into an easy partnership. Daniel would work on repairs during the day while Beatrice tended her garden and chickens. In the evenings, they would cook together, and Beatrice taught him to make proper biscuits while he taught her to read the weather signs in the sky. They talked about everything, their pasts, their dreams, their fears about the future. Tom wanted children, Beatrice said one evening as they sat by the fire. November had arrived with bitter cold and frost coated the windows. We tried, but it never happened. Now I am glad. How could I raise a child alone in this place? You would not have to raise one alone, Daniel said quietly. Beatrice looked at him. Daniel, I told you I cannot. I know what you said. But Beatrice, look at us. Look at what we have become over these months. You cook for me, I fix your roof. We sit together in the evenings and talk. You trust me to keep you safe, and I trust you with parts of myself I have never shown anyone. If that is not the beginning of love, what is it? It is friendship. Is it? Because it feels like more to me. Beatrice stood and walked to the window, hugging herself. You do not understand. Loving Tom, losing him, it nearly destroyed me. I spent weeks after he died wishing I could follow him, wishing I did not have to wake up and face another day without him. And I am just starting to feel like I can breathe again, like I can face the morning without crying. If I let myself love you and something happens to you, I will not survive it. Daniel crossed to her and gently turned her to face him. Nothing is going to happen to me. You cannot promise that, not out here. You are right, I cannot promise we will have 50 years. I cannot promise that a horse will not throw me or a snake will not bite me or Malone will not get lucky with a bullet. But I can promise that however long we have, I will spend every day trying to make you happy. Is not that worth the risk? I do not know, she whispered. I honestly do not know. Before Daniel could respond, they heard the sound of horses outside, multiple horses moving fast. Daniel grabbed his rifle from beside the door and peered out the window. In the moonlight, he could see 5 riders approaching the house, Cyrus Malone in the lead. Get away from the windows, Daniel said. Go into the bedroom and stay low. What are they doing? Nothing good, go now. Beatrice ran for the bedroom while Daniel positioned himself near the door. The riders stopped in the yard and Malone called out, Mrs. Henderson. We need to talk. Daniel opened the door slightly. She has nothing to say to you, Malone, leave now. This does not concern you, Cowboy. This is between me and the widow. Everything concerning her concerns me. Now ride out before someone gets hurt. One of the other men laughed. Looks like the widow found herself a protector. That is sweet, but 1 man against 5, those are not good odds, friend. Daniel's finger tightened on the trigger. Maybe not, but I guarantee the first one through this door will not live to tell about it. Want to find out which one of you that will be. There was a moment of tense silence. Then Malone said, This is your last chance, Mrs. Henderson. We are offering good money for your land, but if you do not sell, we will make sure you cannot work it. Come spring, you will have nothing left, and you will be begging to take whatever we offer. The lady is not interested, Daniel called. And the neighbors are watching. You try anything else, and the territorial marshal will hear about it. The marshal is 3 days' ride from here, Malone said. A lot can happen in 3 days. But he was already turning his horse. The threat had been delivered, and for tonight, that seemed to be enough. The riders left, but Daniel watched until they disappeared into the darkness. When he finally lowered his rifle, Beatrice emerged from the bedroom. She was shaking, and Daniel set the gun aside and pulled her into his arms. She did not resist, just pressed her face against his chest and let him hold her. They are going to keep coming, she said. They are not going to stop until they take everything. Then we will keep fighting. Daniel, maybe I should just sell. Maybe it is not worth. Stop, he pulled back to look at her. Do not let them win. Do not give up on what you and Tom built. But what if someone gets killed? What if you get killed defending a piece of land that is not even yours? What if I am defending something more than land? Daniel cupped her face in his hands. Beatrice, I love you. I know you are not ready to hear it, and I know you are scared, but I love you and I am not going anywhere. This is my fight now too. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. You should not love me, I am bad luck. Everyone I love dies. That is not true, that is just fear talking. Your parents are alive back east, are they not? Your sister, you have loved people and not lost them. But Tom died because a horse stumbled. It was an accident, a terrible accident, but it was not because you loved him. This land is hard, Beatrice, but it does not punish love, it punishes giving up. She looked at him for a long moment, and Daniel could see the war raging inside her. Finally, she reached up and touched his face, her fingers trembling. I am not ready to say it back, she whispered, but I am not pushing you away anymore. I am too tired to keep fighting you and Malone and my own heart. That is enough, Daniel said, that is more than enough. He kissed her forehead and she leaned into him, letting herself be held. Outside, the Montana wind howled around the house, but inside, in the circle of each other's arms, they were warm. The next morning, Daniel rode to town and sent a telegram to the territorial marshal, explaining the situation. He also visited the bank and spoke with the manager, a stern man named Fletcher who had known Tom Henderson. Mrs. Henderson is behind on her mortgage, Fletcher said, consulting his ledger, 3 months. We have been patient because of her circumstances, but patience has limits. What if someone else made the payments? Daniel asked. I have money saved. I can bring her current and keep her that way through the winter. Fletcher studied him over his spectacles. You planning to marry the widow, Mr. Yates? The question caught Daniel off guard. I do not know, maybe, eventually, but right now I just want to make sure she does not lose Tom's ranch. That is admirable. But you should know that Cyrus Malone's people have offered to buy the mortgage from the bank. They are willing to pay above value. But you have not sold it to them. Not yet. Tom Henderson was a good customer, and his widow has done nothing to deserve being forced out. But the bank has to think of its own interests too. If she cannot make the payments, we will have to take action. Daniel pulled out his savings, everything he had worked for over the past 5 years. It was supposed to be the down payment on his own land someday. Instead, he pushed it across the desk. That should cover what she owes in the next 6 months. I will have more come spring. Fletcher counted the money, then made a note in his ledger. You are a good man, Mr. Yates. I hope the widow appreciates what you are doing for her. Do not tell her it came from me. Just say the accounts were settled. That seems like a poor way to court a woman. Maybe, but it is the right thing to do. Daniel left the bank feeling lighter despite the emptiness of his pockets. He had given up his dream of his own land, but somehow it did not feel like a sacrifice. Beatrice's ranch was beginning to feel like his place too. When he returned to the ranch that afternoon, he found the territorial marshal's deputy waiting, a grizzled man named Carson who had been ranging this territory for 20 years. Daniel told him everything about Malone's threats and the incidents of harassment. Carson listened, then shook his head. I believe you, son, but believing and proving are different things. Unless we can catch them in the act, there is not much the law can do. These land speculators know how to operate just inside the boundaries. So we are on our own. Not entirely. I will make sure Malone knows I am watching. Sometimes that is enough to make men think twice, but you should be prepared to defend this place if it comes to that. After the deputy left, Daniel found Beatrice in the barn, feeding the horses. She turned when she heard him and he saw the question in her eyes. The marshal's office is aware, he said, but Carson says we are mostly on our own unless they catch Malone doing something. Beatrice nodded slowly. I expected as much. The law does not reach very far out here. No, but our neighbors will help if we need them, and I will be here. She walked over to him, and for the first time since he had known her, she deliberately took his hand and laced her fingers through his. Daniel, I need to tell you something. The bank sent a notice last month. I am 3 months behind on the mortgage. Come January, if I cannot pay, they will foreclose. Even if we stop Malone, even if we keep the cattle safe through winter, I am going to lose this place. Daniel kept his expression neutral. How much do you need? More than I have. More than I can earn before January. I have been trying to figure out what to do, but there is no good answer. Maybe Malone is right. Maybe I should just sell while I can still get something. No, Daniel said it firmly. You are not selling, we will find the money. How, Daniel, I have sold everything I can spare. I have taken in sewing work, tried to sell eggs in town. It is not enough. Then I will find a way. Trust me. She looked at him with such naked hope and fear that it made his chest ache. Why are you doing this? I have nothing to give you. No money, no future, just a failing ranch and a heart that is too scared to open again. You have you, Daniel said simply. That is enough. That night, another blizzard swept through the territory. Daniel stayed in the house rather than the barn, sleeping on the floor near the fire while Beatrice took the bedroom. But sometime in the dark hours before dawn, he woke to find her standing in the doorway, wrapped in a quilt. I cannot sleep, she said quietly. I keep thinking about losing this place, about having to start over somewhere else. About losing you. You are not going to lose me. But I could, and then where would I be? Back where I started, alone and broken. Daniel stood and crossed to her. Beatrice, you want to know the truth? I am scared too. I am scared that I am not good enough for you, that I cannot protect you from everything this land throws at us. I am scared that I will fail you the way I think I failed my mother when she needed me. But I am more scared of walking away, of spending the rest of my life wondering what we could have been. I am starting to feel things for you, she whispered, real things. And it terrifies me. What kind of things? I notice when you are gone. I listen for your horse in the evenings. I find myself thinking about what you would say about something or planning meals I know you like. And sometimes, when you look at me a certain way, I feel my heart start to open again, and I do not know if I should let it. Daniel reached out and tucked a strand of honey blonde hair behind her ear. Let it, he said softly. Let yourself feel again. I promise I will be careful with your heart. Beatrice looked up at him, and in her blue eyes, Daniel saw the exact moment she made her decision. She rose on her toes and kissed him, tentative and sweet. Daniel wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close, the quilt falling away. When they finally broke apart, Beatrice was crying again, but this time she was also smiling. I love you, she said, the words tumbling out as if she could not hold them back any longer. I do not want to, and I am terrified, but I love you, and if we are going to lose everything, at least I want to be honest about that first. You are not going to lose everything, Daniel promised. And I love you too, so much. They stood there in the firelight, holding each other while the wind howled outside, and for the first time since Tom's death, Beatrice felt something other than grief and fear. She felt hope. December brought deep snows and brutal cold. Daniel moved into the house properly, sleeping on a cot by the fire to maintain propriety, though the neighbors all knew what was developing between him and Beatrice. Some of the older women clucked their tongues about it being too soon after Tom's death, but most people understood that the frontier did not allow for lengthy mourning periods. Life was too hard and too short not to grab happiness where you found it. On Christmas Eve, Daniel gave Beatrice a simple gold band that had been his mother's. It is not an official proposal, he said, nervous despite himself. I know we need to wait a proper amount of time out of respect for Tom, but I want you to have this so you know that I am in this for the long run. When you are ready, whenever that is, I will be here. Beatrice slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. I do not want to wait, she said. Everyone keeps telling me what is proper, how long I should grieve, how things should be done. But Daniel, Tom is gone, and grieving longer will not bring him back. What it will do is waste the life I still have, the love I can still have. So if you want to marry me, I will marry you. We can wait until spring if that makes people more comfortable, but I do not want to pretend anymore that this is just friendship or convenience. I love you, and I want to build a life with you. You are sure? I am sure. They were married in early January by the circuit preacher who came through the territory. The ceremony was simple, held in the small church in town with a dozen neighbors as witnesses. Beatrice wore her best dress, dark blue calico, and Daniel wore his only suit, brushed clean of trail dust. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife and Daniel kissed his bride, he felt as though his life was finally beginning. But their happiness was short-lived. 3 days after the wedding, Cyrus Malone returned, this time with a legal document. Congratulations on your marriage, Malone said, his smile not reaching his eyes. But I am afraid I have bad news. The bank has sold your mortgage to my employers. We are now your lender and we are calling in the full amount of the loan. You have 30 days to pay or we foreclose. Daniel felt rage surge through him. Fletcher told me he would not sell to you. Fletcher does not own the bank, the board of directors does. And they decided our offer was too good to refuse. So there it is in black and white, 30 days, Mr. and Mrs. Yates, then this land is ours. After Malone left, Beatrice sank onto the porch steps, her face white. It is over. We cannot raise that much money in 30 days. Everything Tom worked for, everything we have fought for, it is over. Daniel knelt beside her. No, there has to be a way. There is not, Daniel. I know you want to fix this, but some things cannot be fixed. Maybe we should just take what they offer and start fresh somewhere else. Somewhere else, Beatrice, this is your home. Tom is buried on that hill overlooking the creek. His parents homesteaded this land. We cannot just walk away. What choice do we have? It was a fair question, and Daniel did not have an answer. That night, lying in bed beside his new wife, he stared at the ceiling and tried to think of a solution. He had no more money to give. The cattle were worth something, but not enough to pay off the mortgage. The land itself had value, but only to Malone's people, and they were not buying, they were stealing. The answer came to him just before dawn. It was risky, maybe even crazy, but it was the only chance they had. I know what to do, he told Beatrice over breakfast, but you have to trust me and you cannot ask questions. She studied his face. This is dangerous, is it not? Maybe. Daniel, do you trust me? Beatrice reached across the table and took his hand. With my life, but that does not mean I want you risking yours. I am not going to do anything stupid, but I need a few days and I need you to not worry. That is like asking me not to breathe. He kissed her, tasting coffee and worry. I will be back before you know it. Keep the rifle loaded and the door barred. If anyone comes around who is not me or the neighbors, you shoot first and ask questions later. Where are you going? To fix things. Daniel rode out that morning, heading east toward the territorial capital. He had a plan, but it required calling in every favor he had ever earned and trusting in the decency of strangers. In Helena, Daniel found the offices of the territorial governor and talked his way past 3 secretaries to the inner office. Governor Potts was a shrewd man who had built his reputation on being fair-minded and incorruptible. Mr. Yates, the governor said, gesturing to a chair, my secretary says you rode 2 days to see me. This must be important. Daniel laid out the whole story, from Tom Henderson's death to Malone's threats to the suspicious bank mortgage sale. He pulled out every document he had, every piece of proof, and spread them on the governor's desk. What you are describing is organized land fraud, Potts said, studying the papers. If we can prove it, there will be prosecutions. But proof is the challenge. What if I can get you proof? What if Malone's people confess to their scheme? How would you accomplish that? Daniel explained his plan, and by the time he finished, the governor was leaning back in his chair with a thoughtful expression. That is either brilliant or completely insane, Potts said. Probably both, but if you can pull it off, I will guarantee you the protection of the territorial government. You have my word. Daniel rode back to Beatrice's ranch, stopping only to sleep a few hours each night. When he arrived home, she ran out to meet him, throwing her arms around him before he could even dismount. I was so worried, she said into his chest. You were gone 5 days. I know, I am sorry, but I have a plan. He explained what he had arranged with the governor and watched her face go from hope to fear to determination. This could get you killed, she said. It could, but it could also save everything. I need you to trust me. I do trust you, I just do not want to lose you. Daniel cupped her face in his hands. You are not going to lose me. We are going to win this together, and then we are going to spend the next 50 years building the best damn ranch in Montana territory. Promise. I promise. The trap was set 3 days before the mortgage came due. Daniel let it be known in town that he and Beatrice had decided to sell, that they wanted to negotiate directly with Malone's people. He made sure the word reached the right ears, and sure enough, Malone sent a message inviting them to a meeting at a lined shack on neutral ground. What Malone did not know was that Governor Potts had sent 2 federal marshals, and they were hiding in the shack when Daniel and Beatrice arrived. What he also did not know was that Daniel was wearing a small derringer tucked into his boot, just in case things went wrong. Malone arrived with 3 of his men, all armed. They gathered in the small shack, the tension thick enough to cut. So you have come to your senses, Malone said. Smart choice. We are prepared to offer you $2,000 for the land and buildings. That is more than fair. The land is worth $10,000, Daniel said. Maybe to you. But you do not have any other buyers, do you? So you will take what we offer and be grateful. What if I told you we are not going to sell at all? Daniel said. What if I told you that we know the whole scheme? How you have been buying up land to resell to the railroad at 10 times the price. How you have been harassing ranchers to force them out. Malone's expression hardened. You cannot prove any of that. Maybe not. But the territorial governor is very interested in hearing about it. And he might wonder why the bank so conveniently sold our mortgage to your people right after we refused to sell. One of Malone's men moved his hand toward his gun, but Malone held up a hand. Easy, Mr. Yates, you are making wild accusations, but let us say, hypothetically, that there was some coordination between various parties. What exactly do you want? I want you to confess, Daniel said. I want you to admit what you have been doing right here, right now. Malone laughed. Why would I do that? Because if you do not, those 2 federal marshals hiding behind that wall are going to arrest you for attempted murder, land fraud, and conspiracy. And you will spend the next 20 years breaking rocks in a territorial prison. The color drained from Malone's face. His men started to draw their weapons, but the marshals emerged from hiding, guns already aimed. Nobody move, Marshal Wilson said. Mr. Malone, you are under arrest. You have the right to remain silent, but I advise you to start talking if you want any consideration from the court. It took 2 hours, but eventually, Malone broke down and confessed to everything. The scheme to buy cheap land and resell to the railroad, the harassment of ranchers, the bribery of bank officials. He named names and provided details, desperately trying to cut a deal to reduce his sentence. By the time the marshals led him away in chains, Daniel felt as though a massive weight had been lifted from his shoulders. The mortgage would be invalidated because it was obtained through fraud. The land was safe. Beatrice was shaking when they left the line shack. I cannot believe that worked, she said. Neither can I, Daniel admitted. I was sure someone was going to get shot. If they had, it would have been you. You were standing right in the line of fire. I know, but it was worth the risk. She stopped walking and turned to face him. No, it was not, Daniel. I appreciate what you did. I love what you did, but nothing is worth losing you. Not the land, not the ranch, nothing. Do you understand me? You are what matters to me now. Daniel pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. I understand, and I promise no more crazy risks. From now on, we build our life the quiet way. Hard work, good neighbors, and each other. I like the sound of that. They rode home together as the sun set over the mountains, painting the snow-covered peaks in shades of pink and gold. The future stretched ahead of them, uncertain in 1,000 ways but certain in the one that mattered most. They had each other. Over the following months, life settled into a peaceful rhythm. With Malone and his associates in custody, the harassment stopped. The territorial government voided the fraudulent mortgage sale and gave Daniel and Beatrice new terms they could actually afford. The neighbors, impressed by their courage and determination, rallied around them, helping with spring branding and fence repairs. Daniel officially added his name to the property deed, and together, he and Beatrice began to truly build their ranch. They expanded the herd, planted a larger garden, and made plans to add rooms to the house for the children they hoped to have. One evening in late spring, they sat on the porch watching the sunset, just as they had so many times before. But now Beatrice's hand rested on her slightly rounded belly, and Daniel's arm was around her shoulders. I have been thinking about names, Beatrice said. If it is a boy, I would like to name him Thomas, after Tom. I think he would have liked that. I think so too, Daniel agreed. And if it is a girl? Hope, because that is what you gave me when I thought I had none left. Daniel kissed the top of her head. You gave it right back to me. I spent so many years thinking I had to be alone to be safe, that caring about people was a weakness. But you taught me that love is not a weakness. It is the only thing that makes this hard life worth living. I was so afraid, Beatrice said softly. After Tom died, I thought I would never be happy again. I thought loving someone again would break me. But you did not push, you did not demand. You just stood beside me day after day, showing me through your actions that I could trust you. That I could trust love again. The widow said she could not love again, Daniel mused. But it turned out she could. She just needed the right person to be patient with her. Beatrice laughed. And the lonesome cowboy thought the frontier was no place for soft feelings. But it turned out those feelings are what make the frontier survivable. We have come a long way. We have, and we have so much further to go. They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. In the barn, the horses nickered softly. In the distance, a coyote called to its mate. And in the house behind them, the home they had fought so hard to keep, a lamp burned in the window, a beacon of warmth in the vast Montana night. Daniel thought about the journey that had brought them here. Tom Henderson's unexpected death, his own decision to help the widow, Beatrice's fierce independence and broken heart, the threats from Malone, the desperate gamble that had saved them. Every step had been necessary, every trial had forged them into who they were now. "I love you," he said, not for the first time and not for the last. Beatrice turned her face up to his, her blue eyes reflecting the first stars. "I love you too, more than I thought possible, more than I thought I would ever love again." As summer arrived, the ranch prospered. Their cattle grew fat on the rich grass, their garden overflowed with vegetables, and their love deepened with each passing day. In August, Beatrice gave birth to a healthy son, and they named him Thomas Daniel Yates. Daniel held his son in his arms and marveled at the miracle of this new life, this fresh beginning born from loss and pain and hard-won hope. The neighbors came to visit, bringing gifts and congratulations. The elderly Mrs. Parker, who had clucked her tongue about the quick remarriage, brought a beautiful quilt she had sewn herself. "I was wrong to judge," she admitted to Beatrice. "You and Daniel are good for each other. Tom would be happy for you." "I think so too," Beatrice said, holding her son. "I think he would want us to be happy, to build a good life. That is what we are doing. We are honoring his memory by living well." As autumn painted the aspens gold and the first snows dusted the high peaks, Daniel and Beatrice celebrated their first year together. They had been through so much in such a short time, but they had emerged stronger, more certain of themselves and each other. "Do you ever regret it?" Beatrice asked one night as they lay in bed, their son sleeping peacefully in his cradle nearby. "Giving up your dream of your own land to save mine?" "This is my land now too," Daniel said. "This is our land, our home, our life. I do not regret a single moment. Even the scary parts. Especially the scary parts. They taught me that I am braver than I thought. That I can face down danger when there is something worth protecting. That love is not a weakness that gets you killed. It is a strength that gives you reason to live." Beatrice curled into his side. "I am so glad you walked up to my door that day. I am so glad you did not give up on me, even when I pushed you away. I could not give up on you, you were worth fighting for." Years passed, and the Yates Ranch became one of the most respected spreads in the territory. Daniel and Beatrice had 3 more children, 2 daughters and another son, and their house rang with laughter and life. They weathered droughts and hard winters, they celebrated good years and struggled through lean ones, but they faced everything together. On their 10th anniversary, Daniel took Beatrice back to the spot where they had met Malone's men in that lined shack, the place where their future had hung in the balance. "I was terrified that day," Beatrice confessed. "I thought we were going to lose everything, or worse, that you were going to get killed trying to protect me." "I was terrified too," Daniel admitted, "but I knew I had to try. Because a life without you was not worth living. And now I cannot imagine any other life. You, our children, this land, it is everything I never knew I needed." Beatrice leaned against him and they watched the sun set over the mountains they had learned to call home. The frontier was changing. Towns were growing, the railroad had finally arrived, and Montana was on its way to becoming a state. But some things remained constant. The mountains still stood tall against the sky. The prairie wind still sang through the grass, and love, hard-won and fiercely protected, still bloomed in even the harshest soil. "Do you think Tom would be proud of what we have built?" Beatrice asked. "I know he would," Daniel said. "We took what he started and made it grow. We honored his memory by refusing to give up, by fighting for this place, by building a family here. That is the best legacy we could give him." As darkness fell, they rode back to their ranch house, where lights glowed warm in the windows and their children waited. The widow who thought she could never love again had found her heart healed by a cowboy's patient kindness. The cowboy who thought caring was weakness had discovered that love was the truest strength. And together, they had built not just a ranch, but a home, a family, and a love that would endure for all their days. The frontier had tested them, challenged them, and nearly broken them. But in the end, it had also given them everything that mattered. They had learned that surviving was not the same as living, that being alone was not the same as being safe, and that the greatest courage was not in facing down outlaws with guns, but in opening your heart to love despite every reason to keep it closed. As Daniel tucked his children into bed that night and kissed his wife goodnight, he thought about how far they had come. From a lonely cowboy and a grieving widow, they had become partners, parents, and proof that even in the wildest West, love could tame the hardest hearts and turn a house into a home. Their story was not about the land they had fought to keep or the enemies they had defeated. It was about two people who had the courage to risk everything for love and who found that the risk was worth the reward. The Montana wind sang through the rafters as they fell asleep in each other's arms, and in the morning, they would wake to another day of hard work and simple joys. But tonight they rested easy, knowing they had built something lasting, something true, something that would outlive them both and pass on to their children and their children's children. The widow had learned to love again. The cowboy had learned that love was worth the risk, and together they had written their own happy ending across the wide Montana sky.